For someone whose entire career has been focused on joy, why a podcast on pain? Because these stories need to be told. A good phoenix rising out of the ashes story reminds us all that not only can we survive, we can thrive. And when we emerge, we're different. That's the alchemy of pain. Welcome to another edition of The Alchemy of Pain, the podcast with a name that could be a real buzzkill, except for the fact that we firmly believe that the painful experiences of life are sometimes necessary to make us who we are intended to be. Our mantra, you have a choice. You can't get to choose what life hands you, but you can choose to be bitter or better. And my guests are all people who have chosen to take the pain of life and have it be alchemy that makes them amazing human beings using their gifts in special ways. My guest today is Debbie Marini. She is an author and a mental health professional. And we met serendipitously in an airport many years ago.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? I remember vividly meeting you and feeling this light emanate from you, this positive energy. And as fate would have it, they assigned my husband at the time to sit next to you and not me. And I remember you turning around and saying, "Hey, do you want that seat?" And I was like, "No, have at it." My marriage was getting ready to end, and we can laugh about it now. And here it is, how many years later? I think that was 2016. We're recording this in 2023. And somehow, crazily, we stayed in touch. But I noticed something about you. You changed. You were a light. You had great energy. You were amazing. I was drawn to you. But I have watched your life crack open and you emerge as an amazing force that is helping so many. So I will start with the standard first question, Debbie Marini.
Yes.
What was the pain that was your alchemy?
Oh my goodness, that is such a good question. And I too have to give you kudos back, because when I met you on the plane, I don't just Facebook friend anyone, like I'm not a stalker. But I just felt that I didn't want that connection to end. And when we shared our information, we have stayed in touch over the years. And you too, I've watched you just blossom and grow. And I am now and forever will be your biggest cheerleader. But so the pain that created my sort of resiliency, I guess you could say, which when you were talking about pain and grief, and it's not about the actual sitting in the muck with the grief and the pain, it's about the resiliency and how you get there. What do you do? What are your coping mechanisms that can get you to that point? And that does resiliency, don't get me wrong, doesn't mean just leaving it in the past and forgetting about it. And it's about learning to carry it in your luggage joyfully with you, rather than letting it be a boulder that you drag with you. So my pain and that created sort of my alchemy. And like you mentioned in your email, everyone has different sources of pain. But I think the one that brought the lesson to me was losing my father suddenly. So I'm sure you just saw on Facebook, once a year, we take our son and anywhere from 25 to 35 kids up to my grandfather's place in the mountains. And he bought it back in 1950. He's no longer with us. But we started it in 2018 when he graduated from high school. And that was his graduation gift. And the next year we did it again. And my mom and dad were always there. They were there the first year and they loved it so much. It just felt like it kept them young. And we played games up there. And the second year, closing up the cabin and packing to get ready to go home, my father fell and he fractured his back and he unfortunately severed an artery that led to his heart. So that whole week, when he was going, they had to do an operation right away to figure out where the bleeding was, and he was a kidney transplant recipient as a result of his diabetes, so there were a lot of risks involved. And he was intubated, so he couldn't speak. And I think in that moment, you know how we all sort of have our little roles that we take on in our family, and no matter how old we are, when we go back to being around our mom or our dad, we're all of a sudden kids again. And if you're the middle child, you all of a sudden fall into the middle child. That was the first time that I really sunk into just who is Debbie and how can I help my dad. I didn't take a certain place in the family. I sort of allowed my father to take up all the space in my heart, and my mother to help her through it, and all the space in my soul. And it taught me when he couldn't speak, and I learned to draw on the back of his hand, to draw the letters and spell out words. And then he would tap on the sheet and I would slide my hand underneath. And that whole process, when I got home, he ultimately, a week later, he passed away a week after the fall. And when I came home, I just remember being different. And I'm certified as an NLP practitioner. And I don't know if you know anything about NLP, it's neuro linguistic programming. So essentially, it's a big fancy word for simply reframing your thoughts and just changing negative thoughts to positive. And it's scientifically proven that we all have these neuro pathways that are sort of embedded in your brain. And everybody used to say, well, I am the way I am. And I hate to tell you, but scientifically, you're not, because there are ways that if you recreate a new, if you've never worked out in your life and all of a sudden you want to start working out, you create this little neuro pathway to get your brain used to the idea of working out. And over time, those neuro pathways become embedded and create sort of a new stream. So the negative thought stream eventually dries up, and this new stream becomes your positive thoughts. So people can change and things do change. And what it did for me was helped me to focus on sort of the positive in grief. And with NLP, there's a 7-minute, it can be longer if you need it to be, but it's like a 7-minute practice that's called Ho'oponopono. And it's essentially, you've heard of it. Yeah. So it's essentially the ancient Hawaiians don't believe that when you say, I am sorry, will you forgive me? That gives all the control of forgiveness into the other person. So instead, they make it an equal energy exchange and say, I forgive you, you forgive me. And they make it equal energy. That way, nobody's in control. Everybody is equal. And that's their very firm belief. So every person you meet, you have an exchange of sort of good energy, like we had on the plane, right? And when that good energy is taken from us, when somebody passes away, and grief can also be like you had with Dwayne, grief could be the grieving over losing a relationship. It doesn't have to be a death. Like divorce is sort of a death, and so to speak. So when you grieve and when you've lost someone, that exchange of energy isn't gone, it's just different. So you have to find a new way to fill that energy space that they left and redirect it to being more spiritual.
So I want to go back for a moment, because you had these tools at your disposal and something kicked in when your father was in his last days, something bigger than you, where you could respond not as Debbie, the so-and-so child in line, but a different level of Debbie showed up.
Yes.
But did you immediately tell me about the valley of death for you.
Okay.
From the loss, okay, you had this supernatural grace to deal with your father's sickness and then death, but then there is that space in the loss, where even though you've got a million tools in your toolbox, you are feeling like you're drowning. Did you go through that too?
Oh, absolutely. And let me back up a little bit. How you said, if you have an idea and you say, I have no idea why I'm doing this, do it. Do it anyway. Because when I sort of became certified as a mental health first aid trainer, it's basically just making everybody else aware of symbols and signs that somebody might be approaching a mental challenge. When I became certified in it, I really thought I was going to be a mental health first aid trainer. And what I found is the majority of the people that were at the training, for a week-long training in Seattle and another week-long training in Chicago, they were all sent by corporations and companies. So it's cheaper for the company, it's less expensive for the company to hire somebody, take somebody from within and train them. So it didn't quite work out. I did a lot of trainings, but I found that being an independent was very challenging. So I'm like, why did I do that? Then I became certified in NLP as a practitioner. I'm like, why am I doing this? All of those things came to aid head to prepare me how to deal with the emptiness that I felt. And your question is such a good, so that's what I mean. Just grab anything that comes into your path, even if you don't understand it, because it will be useful at some point. So when my father passed away, I felt guilt, a lot of guilt, because it was at the end of our weekend. And Mark and I had to leave on Sunday to go back home. And we cleaned both, there's 2 cabins up there. We cleaned both cabins, but we stripped all the sheets, and my mom's like, I'll take care of all the sheets. So we left her there with doing all the laundry, and they left on Tuesday and just enjoyed Monday and sat with it. But you can't help but think, if I was there, would it have been different? But this is where my making sense of the loss, I guess. I don't believe in saying that everything happens for a reason, because there's a lot of pain out there that has no explanation. But I do believe in saying everything happens for a lesson. We can all take a lesson from it. And the lesson for me when my father died was to just sink into it. And here's the telltale thing. It is okay to be sad. It's when it mentally help. I'm going to put on my mental health cap for a minute here, but if it is obstructing your life and stopping you from doing what you enjoy and taking away all of your joy for more than a period of 2 weeks, that's how you can tell that you're approaching a mental challenge and maybe want to seek out somebody that you can talk to help you through your grief and help you through your pain. I'm not saying it's not, sadness isn't going to creep back in and you all of a sudden have to feel complete joy. But if the sadness is impacting your everyday life to the point where you don't want to take the kids to school, you don't want to babysit your grandchildren, you don't want to be around your friends, you don't want to do what you normally like to do, go out, have a glass of wine, or just go play tennis or whatever your outlet is. If you don't feel like doing that, and that exists for more than a period of 2 weeks, that's an issue. But I'm not saying that if you pick up your tennis racket and you go out and play tennis and all of a sudden start crying in the middle of the tennis match, that's something big. That's normal. That's normalcy. That is a usual response.
It is such an unpredictable thing, grief. Coming in, it's not linear, comes in waves, sucker punches you when you're just living everyday life. But I want to talk about this, giving yourself permission to be sad. Many of us sunshiny, positive people, the ones that are quick to uplift and be the listening ear for everyone and find those silver linings. We're the ones that have the hardest time saying it's okay to not be okay. How did you get there?
Oh my goodness. I think prayer and spirituality were my two big things. And I don't pin spirituality into a pretty little box. It's sort it as long as you believe there's something more than you, and there's some sort of a divine presence, no matter what you want to call that, something else that put you here for a value and purpose and to live your life, right? um then that, and then those that don't believe that, that's okay too. If you can find a way to live a loving and kind life rooted in love, then you're on the right track, no matter what you believe. Because guess what? When I die, if I go up to heaven and there's, God, sorry, God, but if I go up to heaven and there's nobody there, right, I'm going to be like, oh, wow, they were all right. But what have I lost? What have I lost by believing? So the way that I got to sort of accepting grief was really just a visual of taking my sadness, and rather than trying to push it down, meeting with a lot of resistance, pushing it down. I'm trying to think of an example, but when you're trying to blow up a bicycle tire and the bicycle tire is fully blown and you're pushing down, trying to get more air into that. That's the resistance I'm talking about with sadness, trying to resist it, right? So I'm a big visual analogy person. So what I started picturing my sadness as, I would actually talk to it and say, oh, you're back again. And I would picture wrapping my sadness in a blanket like a baby. And I would just talk to it and say, I see you're back today. What do you need from me? What does my head and my heart need to do to be able to align and reach a place of peace right now in this moment? And even if you have to do that every hour of every day, it brings you to this space where my dad simply takes a different location within my soul. My connection achieves a different location, if that makes sense. So instead of connecting, say, from here, when I would think of my dad, I would think of him down here, and there was a lot of pain and there was a lot of grief and a lot of tightness. I shifted my dad to up here with warmth.
This picture of talking to your sadness and asking what it needs of you. And the answer probably was different each time you asked that question. I think for many of us adults, we know that particularly our parents will transition. It is part of the cycle of life. And we then talk ourselves out of, well, of course, they were 85, they were going to, and we don't give ourselves the permission to feel those feelings. And that trapped sadness is, I think, where we get dis-ease. We are not at ease in our bodies because there's shame and tears. We apologize for breaking down. No, it's perfectly normal and good and right to feel those feelings and let them breathe and let them have their way. And Debbie, I think your story will speak to so many people out there, because we all face loss, whether it is a parent, even a pet. Loss is a part of life. It is a particular pain that is not unusual to any of us. So you sat with it, you gave it permission, you talked to the sadness. And
exactly. Some days what it might need from me is just cry, just let it out and just be strong and cry. We see crying as a weakness, but it's actually, and you see it in the mental health field, the more people that come out and talk about their mental health struggles, the more strength they attach to being vulnerable and talking about your mental health. So the more people that show that they're struggling and show their pain, I just had a lunch with a woman that I know whose son was a friend of my son's, and he took his own life at 19. And we had lunch together to just talk about this whole grieving. And he passed away 5 years ago. And I mean, every single time that Nick graduated from college, or one of Nick's friends graduated, or they're all like, moving on and getting jobs and moving to the city, Sean's not there. And so her vulnerability is such an inspiration, and I really do believe that. So we've talked a lot about grief in the sense of a loss of life, right? But say there's grief where there's a loss of a relationship, and you have a very good friend and you don't speak anymore. They're still existing, they're still here. So how do we deal with that loss? How do we work through that loss? And that's a whole nother visual. And that is what we just talked about earlier, that I have my box that contains my life's purpose and my value. Other people have their boxes that contain their life and their value and their life purpose. And when our life purpose and when the stuff in our box doesn't align with the stuff in other people's boxes, they try to load our box up with their beliefs and their values and their purposes and try to tell us that ours is wrong. And I'm telling you right now, the visual that I use all the time, I have, if you have a very dear friend that you just have a falling out and you fall by the wayside, and you have a difference of opinion and they choose to honor themselves and just walk away from the friendship, then all I can do is be in control of what's in my box. And if I can go back and be accountable for the part that I played in it, that's all I can do. But I can't make them feel a certain way and take something out of their box and give it to me. So it has to be an individual. We're all on this journey together. And if we are not aligning with somebody, we need to honor what is in our life purpose and life value and what's in our box, and say it with gentleness to ourselves that it's okay. It's okay.
One of my go-to mantras is, there's one person you are guaranteed to spend the rest of your life with, and it's you. So making peace with yourself, being in alignment with your inner being, with your source, however you define that, that is such a key. So this one story, and you could have told other stories. This is a woman who, isn't it the most beautiful people, audience? Don't you agree? The most beautiful, deep people have been through, what, like over and over again. I mean, Debbie could have chosen one of the two fires where she lost anything to talk about, but she chose her father's death. And I want to ask you, you made peace with sadness. You talked to it. You accepted grief. You gave yourself permission to not be okay. What did all that produce in you? Who are you today that you would not be had you not gone through that?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question. And who I am today is Debbie. We're all certain people when we're born. And unfortunately, we shift and change and respond to the crap that the world throws on us. And there are no babies born evil. So if I run across someone that the way that I am today is someone that is very understanding, open-minded, of if there is someone who is treating me unfairly, rather than responding with any ounce of sort of pride and hurt, because truthfully, somebody treats me a certain way and I want to respond with anger, that's because my pride has gotten hurt, or they have touched on something that I feel very vulnerable about. So what I try to do now is approach it from a place of understanding. And I don't blame the people that are treating me unfairly. I blame the people that they've met before me that have put them in a position where they feel they need to treat me unfairly. Right? Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. So your response patterns shifted
Yes.
And the vestiges, the external sort of stripped away. And what we have is authentic Debbie, the Debbie that could not have emerged any other way.
Yes. And I literally, the moment that I let go of who I thought I was supposed to be, I remember this past year, I also went back to school and got my master's. And I turned 60 in October, and this was always a bucket list of mine, was to get my master's. So when I would get the question a lot, what are you going to do with it? Like, you're 60 years old, what are you going to do with your master's? And I finally became okay with saying, I don't know, maybe just hanging on the wall. And because not everything in your life has to have a reason or a purpose. If it is your, I mean, I did a lot of research to find one that I knew wasn't going to break the bank. And, and we got financial help. And so I didn't let what was trying to be put in my way stop it. I didn't feel silly for going back and getting my master's at 60. And as a result, the confidence and the knowledge that I learned about myself was what culminated in the book for my granddaughter. It was supposed to be just something that she saw, but it's taken off, and it's now one of a series of 5. So the minute that I let go of needing to know the why, and I just started listening more to what felt right. I mean, don't you agree? You just moved literally cross country.
And this not needing to have to explain our choices to other people, but knowing that there is an irresistible must on the inside that we must honor.
Yes.
And being obedient to that, it will yet remain to be seen why my heart led me to do this. But I don't have to explain myself to anyone, nor do you. And yet you're already seeing the fruit of your decision to follow your heart. I love that it didn't have, I don't need to know why. I just need to do what's in my heart to do. Drop the mic moment for everyone out there. And I do know that our viewers, our listeners are going to want to follow you. How can people stay connected to Debbie Marini?
Well, I do have the name of my company that I started. Again, you don't have to know the why. I started it and wasn't quite sure if I was going to keep it because I wasn't doing anything. But The Awareness Impact is my company name. And it has now sort of melded from mental health advocacy to more of just a platform to educate about what to do in certain situations. And so I post videos every now and then, but theawarenessimpact.com. And then I am on Facebook as The Awareness Impact and Instagram as The Awareness Impact. And then for the author side of it, I've just created a new website called debbiemarini.com. And that will give you all the information about the book and Quinn and how it came to be.
Oh, it's so exciting. And I hope that many people will follow you. You are a voice that needs to be heard. And so this is the standard final question. Perhaps someone is watching this and they are going through their dark time. The dark times can feel like they're going to go on forever. And yet the caterpillar and the chrysalis must keep pressing on because you're creating the strength in your wings so that you can fly when you finally get the heck out of there. What would you say to help someone keep pressing against their chrysalis during their time of pain or darkness?
Well, that's such a good question. What I can say, I can only speak from experience. And one of the things after my second fire that helped me through when I was diagnosed with depression as a result of the fire was when you get to those moments where you feel like nobody understands you, you don't want to talk about it to people anymore because you feel like you're rehashing the same thing over and over and over again, and they're going to get bored listening to it. When you feel that you are so misunderstood or that you are, and that you can't seem to get to that place of understanding who you are, why you feel the way, why you think the way you do. I want to remind you that whether you believe in God or spirituality or a higher being or not, at least pretend to get you through that, because there is always, if you do that, I use the analogy of, if you're a child in a playground, when I talk to the little kids when I read this book, if you're a child in the playground and you fall and you scrape your knee and all of your friends are around you and they all rally to your side and, are you okay? Let me help you up. Do you need to go to the nurse? Do you want help to bandage your knee? Those types of things. That's the support system. Okay. When you're alone and you're walking home from school and you fall, and I ask the kids, the children, this too, when you're walking home from school alone and you fall and nobody is around, what are some things that go through your head? And they were things like, I am so embarrassed. I hope nobody saw. I can't believe I fell. I'm so clumsy. I do this all the time. I'm so stupid. It's all the negativity that comes in. And what I tell them and what I will tell you is that there is always someone, whether you want to I call it God because it's what I know, that God is there saying exactly the same things to you in that moment that all of your friends would be saying. So support never leaves you if you can just grab on to the concept. Just talk. What do you have to lose by believing? What do you have to lose? And then that belief is what got me through. I literally was in such a depressive state. I felt that nobody understood me and I was a burden. And the only thing that got me through was meditation and getting back to the root of my purpose. And your purpose and your value never disappear. They are with you. It's just our job to hang around until they're revealed to us. That's all we need to do, is stick around, just stay until they're revealed to us. So.
Perfect way to end this interview. And I will say, my sister always used to tell me when I was going through a dark time in my youth or even in my early career, and I would be devastated about something, she would always say, mark your calendar for 2 weeks from today. I promise you, you'll feel different, because this too shall pass. And so when you're going through the valley of the shadow, keep going.
That is such great advice, because that's exactly what I use in the mental health trainings. Is circle a date on your calendar and allow yourself to be sad for that amount of time. And then what you're doing is you're focusing on, oh, I only have 3 more days to be sad.
Okay, better get that all in.
Hurry up and get myself.
Debbie Marini, what a joy. You know, I can't wait to our happy reunion in person. This is actually the first time I've had a conversation with you since I met you 6 years ago in the airport. And yet we just get right back on track where we left off, because you are that kind of human being. You are the kind of stories that I want to tell here on this platform. And to our audience, if you know of someone who has allowed their pain to reveal their purpose, if you know someone whose pain has been an alchemy that changed them forever for good, we want to tell that story, because we know there's a lot of people out there in pain and we want to root for them to keep going. That is our mission here at this podcast. So with that, thank you for the privilege of tuning in. Thank you, Debbie, for the privilege of your story. And till next time.
Well, thank you. You are an angel and a light. Thank you so much.
My privilege and my joy. Thank you all. Have a great day.